We're talking with Matt DeMarinis from the White and Blue Review. Matt, let's start with the women's game just real quickly. I know that there's always a lot of hype on this game for UConn when they come to Sokol Arena. And the last few times the result has been obviously not what Creighton has wanted. Ironically enough, Creighton's played UConn much better in stores the last couple of years than they have at DJ Sokol. I guess how much of this do you just credit to, hey, UConn's really good, Paige Beckers is awesome? Like, how much do you credit it to that, and how much of it's on Creighton for not being able to answer the bell?
There's quite a bit of everything there. I mean, UConn's really good. Paige Beckers is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Even more so now after seeing the way she impacts the game in person and the speed at which she does it. Like, when you see someone that plays that fast and is that skillful and they do it in an efficient manner at this stage of their career, like, it's pretty impressive to watch. So yeah, Paige is different. She might be the best player that's ever walked in that gym, honestly. Like,
which is a pretty high bar. I mean, that's
I know people are thinking, well, I mean, it's Creighton plays there, but like, there's been some legendary hoopers that have played in that gym. So she's got a high bar to clear. But I think what you saw the other night was pretty special stuff in terms of the things she did, the way she impacted the game, and just she doesn't make mistakes. It's like crazy. She's a overwhelmingly net positive for UConn, And then the other part of it is, like, yeah, Creighton played terrible. I mean, just didn't do any of the things that they need to do to beat a team like that. It wasn't just about shots not falling or, the type of shots they got. It was just, the attention to detail with, communication offensively and defensively, attention to detail and scouting report things. And, it was just a complete debacle. And, props to Flan, because, like, he tried to send a message to them that was unacceptable, and it got really, really ugly in terms of the final score, which dinged their metrics quite a bit more than like a 20-point loss or a 25-point loss would have, and if they had scored more, But he pulled the starters and kind of sent a message that I'm not going to play you through that type of performance anymore. So I think they were worried about some of the habits that were creeping up, but it was tough because they were winning games. They were finding a way to get it done. So it's kind of tough to, I guess, get that message across when a team is having success on the scoreboard. Hopefully, I think the hope for him now is that, getting 40-pieced in your own gym when you feel like you went into the game with a chance to win it. Like, that's when you feel like you're going into the game and you believe that you are good enough to win the game and you lose by 40 plus. That's kind of eye-opening for you, right, as a competitor. So, Lauren Jensen said it hurt her pride to be out-hustled to the degree that they were by UConn after the game. So it served as a bit of a reset in terms of the things that Creighton's doing that just, aren't top-of-the-line stat sheet specific. So we'll see how they bounce back from that and how they grow from that, because they're definitely better than minus 44 versus UConn, even as good as UConn is.
Matt, is Gino Auriemma the best coach you've seen in person?
That's a good question. So I've seen Coach K and Bill Self square off, like, so that's pretty high on the men's side, I think.
Yeah, it's about as good as it gets on the men's side. I mean, we've seen Jay Wright a bunch.
We've seen Jay.
I'll take Jay Wright over just about anybody.
Yeah, Gino's different. I'll tell you, he's very unique. His pressers are very unique. He's very, very thoughtful and thorough in his answers. Stumble on the word here now. For as detailed as Flan is with his answers and making sure he kind of covers every ground of the question, Gino's a lot like that too, which is rare. Like, most coaches just try to say less and be a little bit cookie cutter about their answers and get in and get out. Flan and Gino specifically are not like that. So he's very thoughtful. He's very, introspective. And then obviously the results are in a one-of-one type of category. Just the way he coaches. He coaches really hard too. Like, I mean, he gets after his players. Like for just the simple details throughout a game. Execution stuff is big with him. So you see him kind of harping on those constantly throughout a game, no matter what the margin of score is. So that's impressive to me because his process. I can tell by his demeanor on the sideline that his process is like that pursuit of perfection, and you can see why they've been as good as they've been over the course of his coaching career. Because he doesn't allow for slippage, even no matter if they're up by 30, he'll coach them. If you're watching him, you can't tell what the score is basically, and I think that's kind of the part of the secret to their success is that he doesn't take the foot off the gas in terms of how he holds his players accountable, whether it's the best player or not.
Matt, quickly before we change gears to the men's side, you spoke about the impact that a player like Paige Bueckers has just on like the fan community as a whole for women's basketball. And then just yesterday, you see NCAA and ESPN renew their contract of an 8-year agreement, $920 million to host 40 championships. But a big piece of that was women's basketball. I think a big percentage, like close to like 57% of that deal had to do with women's basketball. Does that deal happen without players like Becker and Clark and Reese in today's day and age?
Probably not. No. I mean, honestly, you guys might have to cut me off on this topic because I'm going to go off here. Like, there's, it's long. It's a long time coming for this, and some of us saw it, before this wave, really. And I don't know who deserves kind of the most credit for it. I want to say like Caitlin Clark has changed it to a large degree, but Paige Bueckers was one of those players coming out of high school, like number one player in the country in her class. The injuries derailed her springboard, but even when you look at her body of work so far, like she's already had some legendary performances that, that I know garnered a lot of attention, that garnered a lot of buzz, and, made you say, wow. I mean, that NC State Elite Eight game, she was just, that's one of the best individual performances in the NCAA tournament on the men or women's side. I mean, it was Steph Curry-esque, you know what I mean? The way he took over for Davidson back in the day, like she just was unstoppable. She got to every spot she wanted, hit big shots time and time again. And so that was kind of like a glimpse of what she's capable of. And, we're starting to see it now in a more consistent day-to-day manner now that she's healthy again. And knock on wood, she stays that way because she's fun to watch. But I mean, you see the other night in Caitlin, like she's not having a super great game, but it's one of those things where, everyone in the arena knows who's about to get the ball here. Everyone in the arena knows what she's going to do with it, and including the opponent, and they defend it well, and she still goes cash money from the logo, just an incredible player, an incredible performer. Just understands the moment and understands that her role in elevating not just her own individual career, but the careers of everyone who's going to follow her. And I mean, they're not. Yeah, I mean, it obviously is a big part of it from the women's basketball side, player-driven stardom. I think the volleyball part of it is just the athleticism you see. I think starting to like open their eyes to just what high-level volleyball looks like in this country at the college level is pretty incredible. Because, I mean, it feels like you're watching high-level athletes. It doesn't feel like you're just – because I think a lot of the pushback on women's sports is just, it's kind of just a Title IX balancer for overinflated football rosters and resources. Like, you have to balance it out. And, we're kind of like, we're giving the women the chance to kind of play sports, and it's nice and everything, but it's not really a major sport in this country. And I think that's changing. Like, I think it's hard to be honest with yourself if you actually sit down and watch these sports and watch these athletes and watch the competition level that you're seeing in front of your eyes and say, that this isn't legitimately high level as football or basketball is in this country. So, it's a long time coming, but I still think it's just the tip of the iceberg, honestly, because it's just, it's infectious. You see it, and then you kind of get a reaction from it. And I think the thing that's been crazy about this last wave of it, this last year or two, is that it doesn't just die off when the season ends. It keeps going, like, into the offseason. I mean, we've got Texas and Nebraska fans just like all over each other, and we're in January now on volleyball stuff. You know what I mean? Just petty volleyball recruiting stuff.
Yeah,
that's the kind of conversation and the vitriol that you get with like football and basketball, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't usually what volleyball has done is like you talk about it in December, and then before Christmas it's out of your mind and out of your conversation. Like we're into January now, and we're still talking about volleyball and talking about next year and talking about the future and talking about the past. Like it's booming right now, and it's not going to slow down. I think it's just the tip of the iceberg.
All right, Matt, let's switch gears over to the men's side. They've got a big...
I told you to cut me off. Sorry.
No, it was a great answer.
Yeah,
we're not cutting that off.
Yeah, you were rolling. I had no interest in cutting that off. We do only have about 5 minutes left with you, though, so I do want to get over to the men's matchup against Providence tomorrow. Obviously, Providence dealing with a huge injury to their star, Bryce Hopkins, out for the rest of the season. Creighton dealing with their own struggles, although not to that degree, just in terms of how they're playing right now. I haven't loved what I saw from them for the last 2.5 games. It looked pretty good at the start of the second half against Georgetown, but for a lot of Villanova and a lot of Marquette, at least on the offensive side of the ball, and sometimes on defense as well, haven't really been in love with what I've been seeing. How have you evaluated and kind of graded this team through the first 3 Big East Conference games?
Yeah, I think it's just a little bit of that, up and down, figuring out. I mean, I think they know who they are. I just think it comes and goes sometimes in terms of the level that they're executing it at. I mean, when you're incorporating, when you lose a Ryan Emmert and Arthur Kaluma, like those are 2 big pieces to their run last year.
Mm-hmm.
And, Mason Miller has a lot of experience in terms of his years in the program, but not a lot of experience playing this role that he's had. So it's an adjustment for him in terms of play-to-play consistency and being at the proper like intensity level that you need to be every single possession when you're out there.
Mm-hmm.
And Stephen Ashworth is coming up a level, I guess you would say. I think the Mountain West has really good teams in it, but I think it's just a different level of intensity with Big East games. I don't know. I can't really explain it in any other way, and I know it would piss a lot of people off if they're in the Mountain West and listen to that. But I mean,
the Big East is better than the Mountain West. That's not a hot take. Like the Mountain West is a really good conference, but the Big East is better than the Mountain West. That's not a crazy take.
Yeah, it's not crazy, but I think that like some of the things that he did well in the Mountain West should translate to the Big East. It just hasn't yet.
Yeah.
And the thing too is I think it just takes time, especially the more important your position, the longer it takes to kind of get your feel for it. I mean, I think we would all agree that Baylor Shireman is playing better across the board than he did last year.
Yeah.
And then I think, we've seen the same, I think, a little bit when you look at, like, for example, like Tyler Kolek, his first year with Marquette 2 years ago, was unplayable at times.
Very bad.
You know what I mean?
Very, very bad.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, he shot around 30% from the floor, which is horrible. And especially as a primary point guard. And, now we think about him as the best point guard in the country, if not top 3, right? Like, so it just takes, there's an adjustment phase right here that it doesn't come right away for everybody, And I think that's what we're seeing with Ashworth, especially in terms of his shot making, because, I think there's just a little bit of a timing aspect to it, like, because he's missing open shots at a higher rate than he missed them, in his career, and you're thinking, well, they're open shots, so what's the difference? Well, I mean, the difference is the timing is just like closeouts are faster, harder. There's a longer, more physical athlete both knocking you around and coming at you on the shot.
Mm-hmm.
So just, the timing is different, and he's not as comfortable probably as he was, last year. So that's a little bit of adjustment. But I think there's other things that are happening that are good. His assist turnover ratio is really good. His pace is really good. I think you can see that his impact, is good enough for Creighton to be an elite team. It's just about putting it all together in terms of the shot making and the facilitating. And I think that will come eventually, because I think he's getting the shots that he should be getting in this offense. It's all about just knocking them down. Then, what tomorrow represents, just to wrap it all up, and so you don't have to ask a follow-up,
which was going to be my follow-up.
Hey, you have 5 minutes left. Sorry.
Just run out the clock, Matty. You're all good.
Yeah, Providence is going to have a little bit of an identity crisis tomorrow, and it's advantageous for them in this sense. Creighton doesn't know what they're going to do. Creighton have a plan for how they're going to come out and how they're going to approach the game and how they're going to look without Bryce Hopkins, but they don't truly have a feel for it, and they can't truly prepare for it. So Providence has an advantage there. Where they have a disadvantage is obviously Bryce Hopkins is a stud, and when you look at their on-off splits in terms of their, per 100 possessions, it's a nightmare difference for them. So they have to shore up a lot of deficiencies that aren't going to be replaceable by plugging someone else into the lineup. So they need someone to step up, and I don't think it needs to be one person. I think one person needs to play better than they've been playing so far this season. When you look at a Corey Floyd or Rafael Castro or a Ticket Gaines, one of those guys needs to be dramatically more consistent than they've been so far this season. And then everyone else that's kind of been dependable for them so far this year just needs to be incrementally better. A few percentage points.
That's our friend Matt DeMarinis from the White and Blue Review. His phone apparently was telling him that it's time to go also. It's cutting out there at the end. Matty, we appreciate your time as always, and I'm sure we will catch up with you again soon. Yep, he's gone. It's fine. That's Matt DeMarinis from the White and Blue Review. Coming up next, it's time to get into NFL silly season a little bit. We got playoff pictures. We got coach hot seats. Who's still on the hot seat? Who maybe coached their way off of it as well? All that and more coming up next on Hurrdat Sports Radio.